The survey of 1,203 registered voters was fielded from May 14th to 17th, 4 days after the CDC's announcement that depending on state and local laws, vaccinated people didn't need to wear masks in most indoor or outdoor settings. 49% of both vaccinated and unvaccinated respondents who still wear masks said that they did so to protect themselves from the coronavirus. 42% said they wanted to make sure that they didn't spread the disease to those around them. And 21% said they wore masks to protect themselves from illnesses other than the coronavirus. The more disturbing part were the percentages that said that they wore masks because they worried others would judge them, and the percentage that say that they did so because of their political views. Remember what we said about controlling the narrative, boys and girls? Some of us haven't been paying attention. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and certainly not employers. They are thought crime in all jurisdictions previously adjudicated. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They're guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to kick your ass. Welcome back, boys and girls. It's time once again for the Sunday sermon. Happy Memorial Day, folks. Rolling with that theme song. Let's see the fire here. Get everybody in on the drum roll. Where's the energy, people? Welcome back. Happy to see everybody here, man. Happy that everybody is alive and well on this Memorial Day. Pardon the background noise. I neglected to turn the AC unit off here at the extended stay before we get started. Try to keep the distractions to a minimum, but once again, here we are. Happy Sunday. Happy Memorial Day weekend. We'll be getting into the significance and importance of Memorial Day and the lessons that we should really be taking from Memorial Day further on in the program. But we got the usual ranting and raving. We've got the ever-popular Ryan's Rabbit Hole segment that we're going to be coming right out of the starting gate with. And a few surprises on the way, here and there, things that are going on, things that we covered from the week in the news, the Ministry of Propaganda. O'Brien and Goebbels would be proud. Hey, you see what I did there? Managed to squeeze an Orwell and a Nazi reference into the same pinpoint. I have my moments. Anyway, guys, glad to see everybody on board. Let's take a look at who's here. We've got the Bonester, man. Good to see you, brother. We got Wayne Sharp, old school. Hopefully your brother's tuning in too, man. We are back on Facebook Live this week, which is a bonus after 30 more days in the hole. Joey, the Sultan of Sarcasm, is on board early. We've got Roman from Opium Tales on board. Good to see you, brother. Brother Steve Jedden. How you been, man? We are overdue for a catch-up phone call. I'll try to squeeze that one into you. Brother James Pearson, LEO brethren from the Tony Flower Spear System cadre. Good to see you on board. I'm hoping Big John will make it out. Teresa and Emmy. Good to see y'all, man. I'm glad. We got Joe Wisdom back. Brother, man. I see you just got out of Zuckerberg Penitentiary as well. Can't invite people to your Reverend Bart page anymore. I'll tell you what happened there, Joey. They have put some restrictions on my page, and I'm going to assume that if you're watching from Facebook, how about right now, everybody who's watching, no matter what format you're watching on, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook Live, we're on the YouTube channel, wherever you're watching from, if you could just put in the comments like, hey, Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, whichever one of those platforms you're watching on, just kind of leave it over here in the comments so I've got an idea of, where the reach is getting and how many people are watching on what. Brother Ryan on YouTube, because I believe he's in Zook jail too right now. Let me go ahead and fade out the bumper music once again for those of you who have been asleep since the start of the program. The bumper music, as always, is a track called Older No Wiser. It's by a band called Red Desert out of the smoldering ruins of Minneapolis, Minnesota. good little gut stomping rock and roll band. Again, the name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is Older No Wiser, because every week I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. I think the jury is still out. In any case, Joe, let me tell you what. Joe Wisdom on board, and good to have you, brother. Hadn't seen you in a bit. Mostly on YouTube, but howdy to the rest of you. Good. Colin Cantrell, brother. Okay, I have to take a minute here. Colin Cantrell, I'm glad that you're on board for the program. And you're watching on Facebook, which is excellent. Good. So that means that I'm actually getting out on Facebook. I'm out of Facebook jail. Joe, you were asking why you couldn't invite people to the fan page anymore. That is one of the features that are under restriction. Even though I've served my 30 days jail sentence, they have restricted certain features on the fan page, and one of those is inviting friends. I've still got the lurker on board. We're going to talk about the lurker here in a bit. I want to give a shout out to Colin Cantrell. I'm glad that you're here. I don't sing the praises of a lot of people, and it's not to puff the guy's pecker or anything, but Colin is a class act, and he's a damn good human being. When I was emceeing fight shows down in Texas, he helped me out a great deal, both in getting gigs and in advancing my style as an MC. He showed me a lot of kindness and a lot of respect, and went out of his way in ways that he did not have to. And beyond that, he's a staunch conservative. He's a critical thinker and just a damn good human being. And, devoted husband and father, just class act all the way around. So, Colin, just in the presence of everyone that's gathered here, I wanted to thank you for every kindness, every respect, and everything that you've done. I don't know about way too kind, but I have my moments, buddy. I have my moments. Anyway, want to get these things just real quick. I want to knock out the important bits. We got to give shout outs to the sponsors. First of all, to Roman and Allie and Roxy and the bevy of beautiful women over at opiumtales.com. As was inevitable with Jack Boots Dorsey running the show over at Twitter, Opium Tales has been banned from Twitter. It's probably only a matter of time if I join him. But in the meantime, you can check them out at opiumtales.com. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. And not only does he get to surround himself with beautiful semi-naked women, but he's got plenty of critically thought out, testosterone-driven commentary, and we know that we're all about that. Also, Roman is one of my oldest and dearest friends, and I just appreciate him. Check him out at opiumtales.com. And also to my Viking brothers, Casey and Dusty Tellison from Nordic Smoke Barbecue. As the tag says, the only legit barbecue in the inland Northwest. Get some, motherfuckers. Yeah, anytime they're out in that catering truck, the Viking Longship, as they call it, that big smoker trailer that they've got, anytime they're out there in the Spokane area, go out and see them. Tell them the Reverend sent you. They'll probably have a couple of fun stories to share, but anything that they say about what might or might not have happened in Vladivostok or Tijuana is a filthy fucking lie. But no, they are fantastic people. And Casey's book is going to be officially released not too long down the road. I've got an advanced copy of the manuscript. But Casey Tellison, one of those Viking brothers, is a combat veteran, a Marine, saw gunner, machine gunner, humping the big belt-fed battle wagons. And he has released a book. He's a phenomenal writer and just a hell of a guy, too. But the book is entitled Freaks of a Feather. And some excerpts of that advanced manuscript have already been featured in the New York Times. And we're not big fans of the New York Times around here, but you know that that is a pretty big deal when you get your writing featured in the New York Times. And Casey has had excerpts from the book featured in the New York Times, and I think that's a fantastic thing. So yeah, we can support Roman over at Opium Tales. Go buy some artwork. We can buy some barbecue from the Tellison brothers, or buy Casey's book. And once that thing is officially released and on, we're going to be reading some excerpts here on the program, and I'm going to show you exactly what kind of gift that we have on board. So for those of you who are joining on Facebook for the first time in a month, you pretty well can figure out what's going on. I've got a lady or gentleman that I have taken to referring to as the lurker, hashtag lurker. And in their own head, they probably resemble this depiction, and that would be, they're saving the world from wrong think and thought crime. And of course, everything that they do when they report every single one of my posts in the hopes of getting me banned, they are doing their civic responsibility and duty to Big Brother, because, of course, we can't have people out there thinking outside the designated approved thoughts and ideologies. That's just a great big no-no. Now, that's what they look like in their own head. In reality, it's more like this guy, living in mom's basement, reporting posts that make him feel icky. And he's the kind of fella that reads 1984 and thinks of it either as a guidebook or a tremendous work of fiction in which O'Brien at the Ministry of Truth is somehow the good guy. I've got one of these folks, that guy or gal, whoever, I don't want to presume your gender because you're going to get offended at that as well. But they're out there and they're lurking on my page and they're reporting every single post that comes down the pike, and just basically in the hopes that they're going to find something that runs afoul of community standards. And sooner or later, they always do. Every ban that I receive from now on is going to be a 30-day ban. So if you guys are used to seeing me on the fan page, go ahead and get acquainted with my boy Moses Baxter, okay? And Mo, again, thanks for holding it down for me while I was on Zuckerberg lockdown. But go over and send a friend request to my boy Moses. Mo Baxter is the name of his Facebook profile. He holds it down for me every time I get booted. Sooner or later, they're going to boot Mo too, and I don't know what the hell we're going to do at that point. But he will at least keep you posted. And in the meantime, please, on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, when we're done with the program, please kick over to YouTube and go ahead and subscribe and comment and like. All those things drives it up in the algorithm. I have no idea what an algorithm is. Roman can tell you what an algorithm is, but it makes me more visible to people on YouTube. So it drives me up in the standings and expands my reach, basically, which is what Facebook is trying to cut off, Joe, since you asked. They can't ban me from going live again, but they can ban you guys from inviting other people to the page. And so that kind of narrows my reach. They're doing whatever they can to squeeze me out. I'm going to stick with it for as long as I can. But in the meantime, the other format, the YouTube channel, please turn people on to the YouTube channel. If you are on YouTube, go over to YouTube and subscribe, because sooner or later, the Facebook thing is sooner or later, the lurker is going to get his or her way, and I'm going to be gone from the Facebook platform. They will dismiss the account. They will disappear me like the victim of a Stasi informant. And it's not like we're actually too far out from that, is it? Hashtag Stasi Karen. So, yeah, please go over, subscribe. And the more subscribers I get, when I get to a certain level of subscribers, I'll actually be able to monetize over there at YouTube, which means that I'll probably have to curse less, and there'll be other things that I can't talk about. But with regard to that, 6 ways in, 12 ways out. The more things that we have on board to begin with, the longer it's going to take for them to kick me off of all of them. And the more visible I'll be over a longer period of time. So please go over to YouTube, subscribe to the Reverend Bart channel. You can watch it over there. I'm also, even though Periscope is no longer a thing, the Sunday sermons go out on Periscope and they are posted to my Twitter account. Let me roll that banner since we're here. Yes. So switch the banner up at the bottom of the screen here. You can see it. It's got all of my social media accounts, Instagram, Twitter, all the other things. I'm trying to find a way to get this StreamYard platform to stream over to Instagram as well. So I've covered all my bases, but I am on Twitter. I am on Facebook Live for the moment. But I am consistently on YouTube. I haven't managed to piss them off bad enough yet. So maybe I should try harder. Let's jump into this thing, shall we? Ryan's Rabbit Hole, hashtag Ryan's Rabbit Hole. And I forgot to set up that banner over here in the navigation screen on StreamYard, and I apologize for that. I was actually trying to work it out to where I could find a picture of Ryan with the hashtag Ryan's Rabbit Hole. I could put that little meme together over on Image Flip, but any of the pictures that I had of Ryan involved midget porn in Tijuana, and unfortunately, that's a violation of format rules. So sorry about that, Ryan. Do me a favor, send me some pictures with clothes on and no midgets, and we'll be good. I can do that. Anyway, Ryan's rabbit hole. Ryan Adam Jenkins, the Prime Minister of the esoteric and obscure. This week, Ryan's rabbit hole is going to deal with Vice Admiral Robert Fitzroy. Now, you're thinking to yourself, as I was, Robert fucking Fitzroy, what the hell are we talking about there? As we do very often with some of Ryan's stuff. I'll narrow it down for you. He was the commander of a ship called the Beagle, the HMS Beagle. Still nothing? Okay, well, then feel free to go down the rabbit hole with a Google sheet, because that's sort of the whole principle. We're trying to expand your knowledge into some more esoteric realms with some interesting stories behind the stories that you don't really get to see. And the life and the saga of Robert Fitzroy is pretty fucking spectacular. In fact, I could easily spend an hour on it. I'm not going to, because again, this is the rabbit hole. We're kind of giving you that push, and you're going to take it and run with it yourself. But the Beagle, the HMS Beagle, was the ship that Charles Darwin, yes, father of the theory of natural selection, he sailed on that ship. And of course, Robert Fitzroy was the captain of that ship. And that is pretty much the extent. Anyone who does remember Robert Fitzroy remembers him for that project and damn little else. But again, there is a second voyage, the second voyage of the HMS Beagle. And it involves some interesting stuff, founding a colony on an island, a conflict that tore that colony apart involving Maori warriors versus the people who had tried to establish that settlement. It's fascinating stuff. He wasn't Darwin once wrote of the man, and I have the quote in front of me here. He is a very extraordinary person. I never before came across a man who I could fancy as being a Napoleon or a Nelson. Those two references by themselves, if you're not a historian, should send you down their own little rabbit holes, but do some research on that. He basically circumnavigated the globe. He was a phenomenal captain and phenomenal commander and administrator by all accounts. But it's way deeper than that. He's a very, very interesting human being with a very, very interesting story, culminating in a super fucking interesting and holy shit, I didn't see that coming kind of death. So it's a story worth pursuing. Again, Vice Admiral Robert Fitzroy, known as Charles Darwin's captain, but the story, as always, is deeper than that, which is why it's the rabbit hole. So go on down that rabbit hole. Your Google search terms are going to be Vice Admiral Robert Fitzroy, HMS Beagle, Beagle like Snoopy, and you can tie that in with Charles Darwin or not. But look into the man's life. Fascinating individual, and he's one of those people behind the people. Because there are people that we know of that shaped history, and then there are people like Robert Fitzroy who we don't know about that had just as much of an impact, but were sort of like back in the shadows. If I could break it down to a rock and roll analogy, it would be like all of the rock guitarists that went before doing finger tapping technique before some guy exploded out of fucking Los Angeles by the name of Van Halen and made it popular. Those people disappear into obscurity. And thankfully, Ryan has a broad base of knowledge of things obscure and esoteric. So go down that rabbit hole, explore. There we go. Can the donkey stay in the pit? Yes. Absolutely, Ryan. The donkey can stay in the pit. Donkey's okay, midgets not so much, because apparently it offends delicate sensibilities. So anyway. Oh, fucking Ryan, man. What am I going to do with you, brother? That we haven't already done in a felonious kind of way at one point or another. Anyway, so let's jump back into it. Speaking of Ryan was the guy that initially pointed out the fact that the entire sermon had turned into the COVID cast back in the early days. And we had a discussion on the telephone this week. And he said, I gave you a lot of grief for it turning into the COVID cast, but I think it might be time to start talking about that again with all of the things that are coming out. And I firmly agreed. I had every intention of jumping back into that because, once again, boys, our tinfoil hat conspiracy theories have turned into absolute fucking reality. You have heard me say before, I will stand by this till my dying breath. Everything is tinfoil hat until it's declassified. Everything is tinfoil hat until people acknowledge what they've known all of this fucking time, particularly when it comes to the media and the way that they control the perception. If you control the perception, you control the reality. Perception being 9/10 of reality. If you control the stimulus, you control the response. And they have control of that stimulus, don't they? That big glowing box that tells everybody what to do and everybody what to be afraid of. Yes, quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave. Roy Batty, Blade Runner, 1982. Yeah, they've got a lot of people living like slaves. The statistic that I quoted was from one of the bullet points that I had pulled up here at the beginning of the program. The CDC, as you well know, and as we touched on lightly last week, has rescinded almost everything with regard to mask mandates, with regard to lockdowns, with regard to masking outdoors, with regard to masking indoors, and with regard to social distancing across the board. They say, of course, that it's just for the vaccinated people. So knowing what we know, the survey that I pulled up said that something under less than 50% of American citizens have been vaccinated. And the ones who have been vaccinated are concentrated where? In urban corridors, where, oddly enough, the body counts are still high. At this point, no one with two brain cells left to rub together can deny the reality of the situation. Florida, wide open, cases and deaths going down. Texas, wide open, cases and deaths going down. And you remember when DeSantis in Florida and Abbott in Texas said they were going to do that. They were derided. This is Neanderthal thinking. There's going to be a spike in cases. There's going to be a new outbreak, and we know who to blame when it happens. And then, wait for it, boys and girls, it didn't happen. Well, folks like us already knew it wasn't going to happen. Folks like us have been saying the same thing and sticking by it from the very fucking beginning. And I would like to thank Saint Fauci of the Cult of Fear and the Centers for Disease Control for finally catching up to what the rest of us knew from the very beginning. Again, I'll refer you back to one of my favorite quotes. And it's from Aldous Huxley, and I'm semi-paraphrasing because I always get one or two of the words wrong here. But again, the gist of the quote is this: the course of every intellectual, if he stays at it long and thoroughly enough, arrives at the obvious, a position from which the non-intellectual has never stirred. That's right. Us dumb old working class people with them calluses, we ain't got us a whole lot of book learning, but we know bullshit when we hear it, don't we? Don't ask me why I had to lapse into a southern drawl when trying to illustrate less intelligent people. I certainly didn't want to offend anyone in the South. And right now the people in the South are going, do I look like a bitch? Like I'm going to be offended by something like that? Again, I digress. We knew from the beginning it was very, very simple to deduce how these things were going to happen. And if there was any lingering doubt, the early reports that were coming out basically laid those to rest. When New York got their first assessment back, and it said that 90% of the new cases were coming from people who had been locked down indoors, where there was an absolute dearth of cases, a near complete absence of cases, where people weren't sitting far enough apart in a restaurant and contracted the disease that way. When the reports first started coming out, the initial response was put everybody on ventilators, and then they figured out, lo and behold, everybody that goes on a ventilator dies. Well, is that because of the nature of the disease, that they're already too far gone by the time they get put on the ventilators? No. As it turns out, the ventilators were killing people. A lot of us pointed that out early on. But again, what do we know? Follow the science. You're not a doctor. You're not a medical professional. What the fuck do you know? Asymptomatic transmission, myth from the very beginning. And we maintain that. Oh my God, you're a science denier. And then it comes out asymptomatic transmission, outdoors in particular, was myth from the very fucking beginning. All these people who have been telling us to follow the science and all of these other things. Again, the article here is from Vox. Don't get me started on Vox. Why some fully vaccinated people are still wearing masks. And again, guys, if you've got a laptop open and you can click open in another tab, any of these things that I'm doing, any of the tabs that I'm running out, follow the link for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm not your guru. But the item on Vox is why some fully vaccinated people are still wearing masks. And a lot of it does come down to that irrational fear that at this point has been completely, thoroughly, and absolutely debunked. They love using that word, debunked, but all of the fear factors now have been debunked. And suddenly debunked isn't a word that we can use anymore. They know. Everybody knows now. And the fear isn't going to hold up. Remember what we talked about controlling the narrative. Remember what we talked about with regard to controlling people's perception. And you instill that fear. Why are people still wearing masks, even though the doctors have said you can take them off? Because fear is that fucking powerful, particularly as a motivator. There are still people who are thinking that the surveillance state is a good thing, that the surveillance state is the only thing keeping us safe from terrorism. And those are leftover irrational fears that were driven by a media narrative dating back to the Bush administration. All of that has come out and been shot down now, but there are still people that persist in that fear, because fear is like an insidious terminal illness. It gets inside you, it takes hold, and it will not let go, and it will continue to cause detrimental effects long after you think you've parted with it. Some of the things that they use to drive, and I've always been fascinated with propaganda art. Well, with propaganda across the board, it's a subject of fascination for me, and I do a lot of research on that stuff. The way that authoritarian regimes, whether we're talking about the Nazis or whether we're talking about the Soviet communists or whether we're talking about Chairman Mao or Ceausescu in Romania or any authoritarian regime that's had, the East German propaganda ministry, any of those authoritarian regimes, in the way that they have used propaganda to drive things into people's heads, it's a subtle form of mind control. Oh, did he say mind control? Here comes some more tinfoil hat stuff. Yeah, wad up that tinfoil hat and stuff it right up your polite, tight little Pollyanna tuchus there, Sparky, because it's real. No, couldn't be real, Bart. I can't possibly see how propaganda would be used to influence people's opinion with regard to the coronavirus. I mean, authoritarian regimes do that, but we certainly haven't. Oh, look. Yeah, Bart, but that's just in the interest of public health. Oh, you mean like this one? This one right here. Yeah, let me take that banner off just for a second so you can better see this stuff. Yeah, come on, Bart. It's just in the interest of public health. I mean, we're just state of alarm. Only the people can save the people. And we look at this stuff and we think, yeah, this is certainly in the interest of public health. And I'm sure that these examples were probably also thought of as being in the interest of public health. Everybody take a second to read that. Oh, wait, you can't because it's in Cyrillic. Actually, two of you who are part of the program can read it. And you know who you are, hopefully. But yeah, two of the guys that are watching the program right now can read that. Everybody else, oh, wait, I can't read that. Why? Because it's in Cyrillic. It's written in Cyrillic alphabet and it's spelled out in Russian. Oh, kind of like that one, or perhaps this one. Yeah. See, that's the power of propaganda. Authoritarian regimes have been using it for the duration of human history, as long as there were people who could read, and a message and a point of fear that they wanted to get across to those people. But again, we think we're exempt here. We think we are exempt from such things because we're certainly not an authoritarian regime. We have the purest of motivations, and our health officials and our government officials are both benevolent and incorruptible. They only have our best interest at heart. Well, unfortunately, here's some things that have come down the pike. Senator Rand Paul grilling St. Fauci of the cult of fear in front of a congressional committee this week. And it wasn't just Rand Paul. A lot of senators have been grilling Fauci about this. And again, some of this was stuff that we have said from the beginning. I'll get into the reference points here in a minute. I've got a whole list of bullet points that I want to touch on with regard to that. But again, here's where we are. Dr. Fauci, we told you from the beginning, was involved with research programs that went through the National Institutes of Health that funded the Wuhan lab. Our Ministry of Truth, our O'Briens at CNN and MSNBC and all the other mainstream media outlets shot that down as people are repeating widely debunked conspiracy theories. They only had to stick that out for the better part of a year, because now that it's coming out, it's about the 1 year mark from the time that the rest of us were already telling you what was going on, that the mask mandates were bullshit, that the lockdowns were bullshit, that asymptomatic transmission was bullshit. Oh, and by the way, the guy that we're counting on to keep us safe, the doctor, the infallible, benevolent St. Fauci at the top of the medical heap, who was the single authority on the disease and could not be questioned. And people were already looking at his ties to the research and the advance of function research that they were doing through the National Institutes of Health at a lab where in Wuhan. Hate to say I told you so, Sparky, but we fucking told you so. And this week, he's starting to get grilled on it. Actually, it's been the better part of the month. They've been finally having the guts to be that 6-year-old kid in that childhood tale of The Emperor Wears No Clothes. They finally had the guts to be the 6-year-old who stepped out of the crowd and went, look, the emperor is naked. But now they're seeing that naked emperor through a wide angle lens, and it's all coming out. The Wuhan Institute of Virology, this is what went on during the hearing. Senator John Kennedy, no relation, from Louisiana, raised questions about whether the funding provided to the Wuhan Institute of Virology was used for its intended purposes and not for gain-of-function research, which Fauci has previously described as taking a virus that could infect humans and making it either more transmissible or pathogenic for humans. Fauci confirmed that the $600,000 in grant funding to be used over the he basically confirmed that the research went there. But this is so brilliant. This is so brilliant. The people in these positions are so compromised to China that Fauci's response was basically, we have to trust them. See, we know that the Wuhan lab didn't do gain-of-function research because all of the research that they did, the results were posted to the internet. Take a deep breath, wait for that to sink in. Yeah, we have to just take China at their word, because you see, all of the research that they did was posted on the internet. All of the results, of all the research that was paid for by that funding, it was all posted on the internet. See, that's the same criteria that we have for, germ warfare research at the Dugway Proving Ground here in the United States. And we know that unsuspecting Johns weren't involuntarily dosed with LSD in CIA mind control programs. We know that, because it would have come out, and they would have posted the results of that research. And we know that radioactive isotopes were never put in oatmeal that was given to retarded kids, as part of radiation experiments, because, those things would have been posted to the internet. All the things that I listed have actually happened, right? Now, some of you already know that. Some of my friends already know about these things, but a lot of you may be uninitiated to these things that have gone on. Why? Because the media doesn't make a big deal out of it. That's why they're called, wait for it, secret experiments. But St. Fauci, who is up to his neck compromised through these grants to the National Institute of Health, in bed with the Chinese, as is our president. I cannot overstate the importance of that little factoid. Don't ever lose sight of that. But the grant funding went to the Wuhan Research Lab, and now it's coming out that researchers at that lab were among the first to get sick and the worst to get sick with a disease whose symptoms are consistent with, wait for it, COVID-19. Yeah, that's all coming out now. Remember, only a year ago, you could be banned from social media for even suggesting such a thing. In fact, the lurker, if they repost and report this video, may get me banned once again from Facebook Live, because now Facebook is coming out and denying any of this stuff, knowing this came out, James O'Keefe Project Veritas this week, that Facebook is outright shutting down discussion on factual information that's come out suggesting that it might have escaped from the lab. Anything that might deter people from the official narrative, anything that might deter people from getting the vaccine, even if it is factual, Facebook has come out and said, we are going to ban this information. It will be a violation of community standards. So this video, if the lurker is watching, may get their way. Remember when they told us less than a couple of months ago that we were going to have to get frequent booster shots, even the people that were vaccinated. Why? We don't want to let go of the power. This has always been about power. This has always been about control. And now that the science is no longer supporting the control narrative, well, we're no longer required to follow the science. As we've said before, it was never about science. It was always about control. The New York Times, of all fucking publications, came out this week and said that a study has found that immunity to the coronavirus may persist for years, not only in vaccinated people, but in unvaccinated people that have contracted the virus and survived. 99.875% of those who contracted the virus and survived, they don't need to get vaccinated, and the immunity will last for years and years and years. So there's no need to line up for another shot, as if there was a need to line up for the first shot. So why are people still wearing masks? Why are people still believing the narrative? Why are people still giving Anthony Fauci the time of fucking day? Some of us are old enough to remember, and again, it took John Wilson, a friend and fan and supporter of the program, early on in the pandemic to remind me that Fauci has tendrils going all the way back to the AIDS epidemic, the early days of the AIDS epidemic. Some of us who are watching are old enough to remember that. Some of us who are watching are old enough to remember how Gallo and Fauci and others involved in the initial research programs fucked that up. Some of us are old enough to remember AZT. For those who may be uninitiated, AZT for the longest time, thanks to the work of Dr. Gallo and Dr. Fauci, AZT was the only FDA-approved treatment for acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Here's the thing about AZT. AZT was researched during the 1970s as a potential treatment for cancer. Yeah. It was denied as a treatment for cancer. Why? Because, as it turns out, AZT, wait for it, destroys a person's immune system. Again, one of those, we're going to take the hat off, take a deep breath, give you a minute to process that. Thanks to the work of Fauci and Gallo and others, for a long period of time, the only FDA-approved treatment for acquired immune deficiency syndrome was a drug that was rejected for cancer treatment because it destroys the immune system. One more time for Democrat voters and those in the back. A disease that is known for destroying an immune system, and the only approved treatment is a drug that destroys the immune system. There's another rabbit hole for you. Sorry, Ryan, didn't mean to step on your toes there, but it was there. Let's send him down and let him do some goddamn research on that. Yeah, Joe, I know it may come as a shock, but yeah, do some research on that. Feel free to go down your own rabbit hole there, buddy. Hey, Treasure Monk's on board. Real quick shout out to my brother, Jeff Truitt. And if you're watching on YouTube, once I'm done with the sermon, kick on over and check out his channel, Treasure Monk. My buddy Jeff, can't say enough good things about him, man. Been friends since we were kids. He has seen Trigger Time on multiple continents. He's just a hell of a guy, and now he's out there searching for treasure. So go out there and, literally searching for buried treasure. Go check him out, Treasure Monk, once I'm done with the program. But yeah, that was largely due to the work of Dr. Fauci, Dr. Gallo, some of the others. There's an old HBO movie that you could watch called "And the Band Played On," that talks about the early days of the epidemic, and there aren't enough fuck yous to go around. In any case, people should have stopped paying attention to Fauci decades ago. They're still holding him up like a fucking rock star right now, even though he has flip-flopped dozens of times, and every time, you see, this is an act of faith. This is not an act of science. This is an act of religion. They are holding the man up as a saint. Every statement that he makes is somehow true through some bizarre act of hashtag intellectual gymnastics. Every statement that he makes is true, even the ones that contradict previous statements that he made. Kind of like talking to a Christian about the Bible, kind of like talking to a Muslim about the Quran, kind of like talking to Democrats about anything, talking to leftists about Marx. You're not going to get anywhere. It's an article of faith for these people now. And nothing that they say, nothing that you say, more to the point, is going to be able to talk them off of it, even the self-contradictory parts. And that, unfortunately, that's just one big chunk of truth cock. And y'all are going to have to choke on it. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are. So how did we get all fucked up like that? And it wasn't that long ago that we knew. And even left of center outlets were open to acknowledge it. From The Atlantic, of all fucking publications, The Atlantic, April of 2020, little over a year ago, how China deceived the WHO. U.S. senators are calling for investigations, and the president is threatening to cut off funding. What happened? And eventually, Donald Trump, our president, did cut off funding to the WHO, much to the shrieking consternation. A couple more of those college words. I got like 7 of them now. Much to the shrieking consternation of the masses and the Ministry of Truth, he cut off their fucking funding and was excoriated for doing so. It was the only proper move that he could have made. And what is one of the first things that our compromised cadaver-in-chief did upon entering office? He put that funding right back into the hands of the WHO, the World Health Organization. You know, like Antifa, it's right there in the title. See, it's right there in the title. If you know, Antifa just means anti-fascist. So if you're against Antifa, that must make you a fascist. Well, it's right there in the title, the World Health Organization. So if you have a problem with the World Health Organization, what? You have a problem with public health? This is the way propaganda works, and this is the way that narratives are controlled. That's the way that it functions. Even The Atlantic, as recently as April of 2020, was admitting that the Chinese and their funding and their political stroke had compromised every bit of information that we were getting on COVID-19, both from its virulence to its lethality to its body count to its method of spread. Everything that they told us was an outright lie. Why? Because the Chinese controlled the output from the WHO. They controlled the information that was coming out. And since, as it's coming out now, the virus did come from the Wuhan lab, they had a vested interest in keeping that under wraps. Other things like allowing foreign flights, allowing flights of Chinese citizens, many of whom were infected, to foreign countries, but cutting off all domestic air travel. They knew exactly what the fuck they were doing, and the WHO worked as a propaganda arm. Trump had the good sense to see it, and he cut off their funding. Biden is entirely compromised to the CCP and restored their funding. avensonline.org. I want you to pop this in for future reference. avensonline.org. avensonline.org, the Journal of Integrative Medicine and Therapy. This is the title of the story. You can go back and find it later. Why the corruption of the World Health Organization is the biggest threat to the world's public health of our time. This article dates back to 2015. They were already talking about it. We knew that the WHO was compromised. First, by corporate money, the pharmaceutical industry, big pharma. We knew that they were compromised. And then once the Chinese started becoming big benefactors of the WHO, politically, they essentially controlled it. Some of the earliest episodes of the sermon, we did deep dives into that. Here's a story from The Guardian, of all fucking places. Not exactly a hotbed for right-wing conservative thought. This dates all the way back to January of 2019, before COVID was even in the public consciousness, of a senior WHO official using Ebola cash to pay for his girlfriend's flight. That's some sniveling small shit. But an article from the National Review detailing how the GOP was recommending as far back as 2017 that the funding to the World Health Organization needed to be cut off until it cleared up its act. Guys, go in and look at it. It was scandal after scandal after scandal. 54 scientists. Now, this was June the 12th of 2020. 54 scientists. And this is where a lot of us, this is from sciencemag.org, by the way. Again, not those right-wing crazies as they are dismissed from Newsmax or Fox or OANN. This is from sciencemag.org. 54 scientists. This was June of 2020. 54 scientists have lost their jobs as a result of the NIH probe into foreign ties. People were actually looking at how they were compromised to the Chinese Communist Party. Some of us pointed that out. I pointed it out. I didn't realize at the time it was 54. At the time it was about a dozen, I think, when we actually covered that. We actually covered that on the sermon. Another one from The Lancet. You guys familiar with The Lancet? World's leading medical journal. Not OANN, not Newsmax, not Fox, not some right-wing crazy on the internet, but from The Lancet, of all places, as far back as November 27th of 2019. Corruption. Now, this is right when the Wuhan virus was getting starting to get traction. The Lancet came out with an article, Corruption in Global Health, the Open Secret. I want you guys to look that up. TheLancet.com, Corruption in Global Health, the Open Secret. One day I will learn how to put a StreamYard menu. Don't quite know how to do that yet. Corruption in global health, the open secret. How they are compromised, not only to Big Pharma, but to the Chinese Communist Party. The Lancet covered it at length. We knew. We spoke. We were derided. as tinfoil hat lunatics, and now the truth has come out. What do they say? The truth will the truth shall set you free, but first it's going to piss you off. You should be getting plenty pissed right fucking now. Bet your ass. But again, at the end of the day, we're all going to have to choke on it. Why? Why? Because too many of us are driven by fear. Fear and nothing but fear. I've said before, we don't do black pills around here. We don't get depressed. We don't let the fear or the overwhelming nature of the things that we're up against get to us. I make these things as a statement of fact. Don't let the tone of my voice fool you. I'm hacked off, certainly, that it took so long for a lot of hashtag OIP, otherwise intelligent people, to finally come to the realization that the things that we have been saying from the beginning of this, we were correct. The things that we got wrong, certainly. My estimated body count at the start of the pandemic was wrong by a magnitude. And I own that. That's one great thing about having everything on video is you guys can go back and go, hey, here's where you were right and here's where you were wrong. We were right about the Wuhan lab. We were right about the ridiculousness of masks in outdoor settings. We were right about the uselessness of social distancing in most outdoor settings. And we have been right, as it turns out, about Dr. Fauci being up to his balls, compromised and connected through the National Institutes of Health to the Wuhan lab. And it's all coming out now. So you can take my tinfoil hat, wad it up into a tight little ball with lots of pointy edges, stuff it right up your ass, Sparky. We've been right from the beginning, and it's all coming out. And that, to me, boys and girls, is something worth smiling about. You will never get the apology that you are owed, you dirty little tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. You'll never get the apology that you are owed. You will never get the mea culpa that you deserve from your friends. They will continue to find reasons to deride you because now they have been proven wrong. But it's okay. We smile. We move forward. Because the one thing you need to take from this, boys and girls, is the lesson is no matter what the glowing box is telling you and everyone else, no matter what the glowing box is telling everyone else and what everyone else is beating you over the head with, when you are right and you know that you are right, don't ever back down from that truth. Weather that storm, weather the slings and arrows, and know in your heart that you are correct. Know in your heart that you don't need to back down, and know in your heart of hearts that eventually these grazers, hashtag grazer, are going to be shaken to their core when the truth comes out. Let them live in fear. Fear, I wish I had taken the time to plant that one over here on the navigation screen here in StreamYard. But it's a big piece of graffiti in a long tunnel that says, "Fear is a liar." So don't buy into the lie. Let the grazers and the Pollyannas have their fear. Let them have their lie. Because eventually, fundamentally, people are suckers for the truth. And the truth will eventually out. What we choose to do with that, well, that falls to you and to me, doesn't it? Unrelated. Memorial Day. I want us all to take a minute, longer than a minute. It's great that we got the day off work, and it's great that you're getting to spend time with your family and the barbecues and all the other things that are distractions. There are Hallmark holidays, and then there are holidays where we need to take more than a minute to reflect. Memorial Day dates back all the way to the end of the Civil War. It was initially meant to memorialize, and I quote from one of the leaders at the time, the victims of the war to end the late rebellion. In other words, we're going to commemorate the guys that put those rebels down. It's evolved from there. I'm not going to disparage the holiday simply because of its origins in that about putting down insurrections, especially with all the insurrection talk going around right now. Dates all the way back to the American Civil War, and 214,000 Americans died in the War of Northern Aggression. 214,000, almost 215,000. That would not be eclipsed until World War II. World War I, believe it or not, for all of its horror, and my God, the scope of the horror is unspeakable for World War I. But only 53,000 Americans died in World War I. Combat deaths, I should point out. I'm speaking strictly with regard to combat deaths. Okay. Disease, things like that, up until World War II was the first. World War II was the first war where combat actually killed more people than disease did. Okay, I'm speaking strictly with regard to combat deaths. I'm speaking strictly with regard to the boots on the ground that laid down their lives doing what they felt was their patriotic duty for God and country. 47,000 in Vietnam. Almost 34,000 in Korea. Over the entire course of American history, everything, including Revolutionary War, the Indian Wars, the Mexican Wars, police actions, name it. Total number of deaths are over 1 million, almost 1.3 million. Veterans Day are for people who have served the country. Veterans Day is for people who have served the country. Memorial Day is to commemorate the fallen, people who made the ultimate sacrifice for God and country. Take the time. Whether it's pulling yourself away from the family dinner or just having a quiet moment of silent prayer early in the morning. There are a lot of people who disagree with the policies of this nation. There are a lot of predatory miscreant scumbags that think that we have always been a hateful, worthless, aggressive, plenty of those people. But even among people who don't feel that way about the country, there are people who have perfectly rational disagreements with the policies that get us into these wars. That is not the fault of the men who fight them. The politicians that get us into the war, their actions have nothing to do with the brave men and women who go and fight these goddamn wars. Some of them do it for personal reasons. Some of them do it out of a sense of duty and devotion. Ultimately, they all do it for something outside themselves. They do it for us. For whatever notion of freedom or representative democracy or liberty that still remains in this day and age. They do it for those reasons. And many of them, what they say, all gave some gave all. Many of them, almost 1.4 million over the course of our history, have made the ultimate sacrifice and laid down their lives for their fellow man, for God, for country, for me, and for you. So, the very least that we can do is to honor them in the microcosm by taking a minute of silent meditation or prayer of respect for them. But the way that we honor them going forward is to make sure to live our own lives in a sense that honors the sacrifice that they made. To be exceedingly reluctant to give up any measure of that hard-earned liberty. To be exceedingly reluctant to be ruled by fear of outside parties and controlled by that fear. And most of all, vigilant in every thought and every action against the people who would come in and crush that spark of liberty for which these people laid down their lives. You want to honor them? Take a moment to pray, but take a lifetime to act, live, and exemplify the ideas for which they made the ultimate sacrifice. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate you guys being here. If anything that I said did you any good, if it's a new fact that you were exposed to for the first time, or if it's a rabbit hole that you wouldn't have ordinarily been down, you want to throw me some coin, that would be fantastic. I am on Facebook Pay, I'm on PayPal, I'm on Venmo, Cash App, all of it. I'll just pass around that little digital collection plate. But if you don't feel it or you're not in a position where you can help out, that's fine too. What you can do for me, if you really want to help out, is tell other people about the program. People who might be kindred spirits or like minds, or just share even a couple of those opinions, people that might need to get red pill turned on to some ideas they might not have heard of before. You can spread the gospel to those guys. Tell them, hey, there's a fat, crazy cripple that rants for an hour every Sunday. I think you'll dig it. Turn them on to the program. But the most important thing that you guys can do, dig what I got going on, the most important thing, always, the 3 prime directives, guys, we already know, and you can say it along with me. Rule number 1, be the signal in a world full of noise. Rule number 2, be the light in a world full of darkness. And rule number 3, the most important, is to be that strength in a world full of weakness. Everything that we talk about here with regard to that fear is connected to weakness. Weakness is what inspires fear. If you're afraid of something, learn everything you can about it. You're going to find yourself less afraid. And the less afraid you are of something, the harder you are to control. The more likely you are to take that next step, to make yourself smarter and sharper, and stronger, harder to kill. Again, we want to exemplify the traits that we want to see in the world. We don't want to just talk about it. We want to get out there and live it. So by all means, get out there and live it. Don't be afraid to open your mouth and communicate with people, because that voice and the way we choose to utilize it is the most important asset we have. So until next week, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate you guys being here. You honor me. I love each and every one of you, man. Take good care of yourselves, guys. I mean that. And stay strong. See you next Sunday. Peace.